Hello, so in the last video, we looked at the background for my presentation on my endless English talking time system. So now we're going to look at the content for my presentation. And this is a presentation that I've made to other teachers and that I'm going to make again in the future to other teachers. And the format for my presentations is a combination of teacher content and the lesson plan format that I use for my students. So the format of this document is that of a worksheet that I use for my students, but the content is for teachers being trained. So if you remember from the last video, my scaffolding system based on Jerome Bruner's scaffolding system consists of SIDFAN, simplification, which takes place in the lesson planning stage, interest, which should take place at the beginning of the lesson and at the beginning of each activity, demonstration or modeling, which should take place at the beginning of each activity. It can be written or oral or a physical demonstration or some combination thereof. And then focusing, assisting, and noticing, which can be used as necessary throughout the lesson. And the foundational components of a good lesson are a clear communicative objective, a clear linguistic objective or language objective, a clear phonological or pronunciation objective, and a clear context. Okay, so the topic, endless English talking time, how to get students to have lengthy, real conversations by using scaffolding and deconstructing conversations. So we start with the warm-up. How do you get your students to have real conversations? And the purpose of this is, the purpose of the warm-up is to engage my students' interest and demonstrate the task and see what they can do with it. So what I do is choral response, look, listen, and repeat. So I say the question and they repeat it, and then I demonstrate it with one or two students, and they need to ask and answer the question and also ask some follow-up questions, who, what, when, where, how, and why, which we'll talk about more later. And they do that for a minute or two, maybe three, okay? So that they are talking from the beginning. And then we move on to focused input, lexical input. And here we have STT, student talking time, TTT, teacher talking time, CCQs, concept checking questions, interaction patterns, scaffolding, Jerome Bruner, feedback, teacher-centered teaching, and learner-centered teaching. So again, with my students and for my presentations, with the trainees, we do, for this presentation, choral response, look, listen, and repeat. We practice the terms, and then they take 2 or 3 minutes to put the terms in the correct spaces. Okay, and my students have my worksheets either printed out if they want to do it that way, or on their tablet, laptop, or phone. It's their choice. So if they're using some type of computer device, they can easily look up any terms that they don't know. All right, and then we go to the dialogue. So this is a conversation demonstration and controlled practice. So again, we use choral response either as an entire class, they look, listen, and repeat, or I divide the class into two parts. And a lot of my students have trouble speaking English loudly. So it's good to divide the class into two parts and make it a competition as to which group can speak more loudly, just to get them used to speaking loudly. All right. So if I do it that way with two groups, obviously one group will take the part of the first person, in this case it's Sayan, and the other group will be the other person, in this case it's Sam, and then we switch. And then either way, they practice the dialogue with their partner 2 times, changing roles, obviously, and also they need to change the content, the names, and some of the other details to make it a little more personal. And then we move on to pronunciation. Normally it's a sound that we focus on. Sometimes it's intonation or something else. In this case, the example is the sound R. And if you'll notice, in these words, R is in the initial position, and in these words, in the medial position, and in these words, in the final position. So we do choral response, and we talk about where the sounds are made. I have these diagrams here that they can refer to, and we compare sounds in English language with sounds in their language. And I tell them to focus on this particular sound for the lesson. And then we move on to the main part, conversation. And these are example topic questions. All right. We do choral response again. And then they practice these questions. And we do speed chatting, which simply means they work with a partner. If there's an odd number of students, there'll be one group of 3, but ideally they'll just have one partner. And normally they practice in 6-minute rounds. It can be anywhere from 3 to 10 minutes. And between rounds, they change partners. And also between rounds, I give them feedback, or I ask them to tell me what their partner said, or they interview me as a class, just so I can see if they're doing things properly, and so they can get to know me a little bit better and be more comfortable asking questions, or I ask them questions, or we go over grammar. Usually after the 2nd or 3rd round, we go over the grammar. And also after the 2nd or 3rd round, they're told not to read anymore, so they're not just reading the questions. And for the purpose of differentiation, there's a space down here for them to make extra questions. Okay. And they're told to have a real conversation, and they're helped to have a real conversation. That's what the purpose of my system is. Not an interview, not an interrogation, not 2 robots talking. So here is a condensed look at my system. So basically, good language skills and a good conversation system equals a good, long, interesting, real conversation, or a good conversation system plus a real conversation equals improved language skills. So they need to ask a lot of follow-up questions: who, what, when, where, how, and why, and not rush through the questions. And a switch question: how about you, what about you, and you, and maybe some extra questions. Maybe some extra questions such as what else do you do, did you do, what did you do after that, and after that. So this chart shows how a conversation should flow. And this isn't a math formula, it's not science, it doesn't have to be perfect, but there should be some kind of system, some kind of organization. All right, so they start with a topic question. Person A will ask a topic question. So maybe the topic of the day is health or sports or whatever. So something about health. And person A will listen to person B's answer and then ask a follow-up question, maybe 2 or 3 follow-up questions based on their answers. And then person B can switch it and say, how about you? Meaning referring to topic question number 1. And then person B should ask some follow-up questions, listening to person A's answers. And then person B can start the next topic question. So something else about health, and follow-up questions, a switch question, follow-up questions, and so on and so forth. This can go on endlessly. If you know this system, you could talk all day, all week, all year, just using this system. That's why I call it endless English talking time. And they should have a real conversation. And after 2 or 3 rounds of speed chatting, they should not be reading. And they shouldn't need to. If they're using the system, they know the topic. And they should be interested in their partner and ask lots of follow-up questions and not stop. And they should speak in complete sentences. As far as the grammar is concerned, it involves using the inductive approach. So they'll have already seen it and heard it and used it to some extent, probably not perfectly, but they'll have already experienced the grammar, and then we just analyze it. Okay, and my speaking tests are 3 minutes long, the midterm and the final. On test day, they get a random partner. I use their name cards, mix them up, and make the teams in the order. And they have 6 topics before each test, which they reduce to 3 topics as a class. They vote on the 3 that they want for the test, for the midterm, and then again for the final. And then when it's their turn, they and their partner choose one of the cards randomly, and that's their topic for the test. And to reinforce the topic and grammar, they have to write a paragraph for homework about the topic using the grammar. And for some reason, my Korean students tend to write lists of sentences, not paragraphs. So that's another reason to have them do this writing. So that's a closer look at my system and a look at my presentation of my system using teacher content and a student lesson plan format. I hope this was helpful. There'll be more videos about my EETT system in the future. Thank you. Have a good day.